And we are on to Shaman. First up, we have Serpent Shrine Portal. 3-cost spell, deal 3 damage, summon a random 3-cost minion with Overload 1. This is just powerful. Dealing 3 damage to either a minion or your opponent's face, very powerful. Ooh, hiccup. Dealing 3 damage to either opponent's minion or the opponent's face, just powerful tempo, powerful burn potential. 3-cost minions obviously is a wide range of possible results, but you're not dealing with a cost that has like really poor overall mana with like lots of powerful Battlecry minions or something like that. You're gonna get lots of like 2/4s and 3/3s and whatever else. So yeah, I think it's just a solid card. I don't know necessarily what the deck that you play this in. There's like the spell shaman is definitely something that obviously can utilize this as both removal and tempo. But yeah, I just think it's a solid card. Probably see a good amount of play. You can get some of the primes with this, right? There's 3-cost primes that can come off this. You can get like Akama, who we were just talking about, and that could be sweet. I think Mishifin Prime is also 3. And Lady Vash, I think, is also 3. So, lots of possible high rolls in this too. But yeah, overall, I think this is just a solid card that will definitely see play. Next up, we have Vivid Spores. 4-cost spell. Give your minions Death Rattle. Resummon this minion. There's been a lot of cards like this in Shaman. There's like obviously there's like Ancestral Spirit, which just gives this to a single minion. We've seen stuff like I'm trying to remember the names of some of them. Spirit Echo that gives your minions all Death Rattle return to your hand. It's hard for me to evaluate this card. I think this card you'd have to have a very specific deck to utilize this. You probably want some sort of like Death Rattle deck that like you're like AoEing the board and putting this on like a bunch of things that like you're going to be killing yourself pretty often. But this is just like pretty slow, pretty clunky, and feels like you need a pretty specific board to like care about playing this instead of just playing like an Ancestral Spirit. You need to have more things that you want to be Vivid Sporing. So overall, I'm not super impressed by this. Maybe you're using this like on like just a board of minions that you're like hoping to just keep around for Bloodlust, right? Like maybe that's what this is kind of like Bloodlust protection. You're just playing, you have whatever sort of Murloc board or something, and you just Vivid Spores it. So if your opponent AoEs, you're able to protect it for Bloodlust. But like, is that really even just better than like Soul of the Murloc, right? Which costs 2 rather than 4. So yeah, I feel like this is pretty expensive, pretty clunky, and probably won't see that much play. Next up, we have Bog Spine Knuckles. 5-cost weapon. After hero attacks, transform your minions into random ones that cost 1 more. It's a 4/2. I like this card. I think this card is cool. I think that obviously evolve cards are often pretty polarizing. I like the fact that this is a weapon that you can like get like locked and loaded to be able to swing when you actually have a board you want to evolve. Obviously your opponent can interact with it too. They can kill it. Zephyrus means that every deck can possibly have weapon removal. This is a 4-attack weapon. It's not like a 1-attack weapon, so Zephyrus will care about it. It also means that it can be some sort of board control as well. But yeah, I think this is a neat card. I doubt this is going to be like a highly competitive card, and frankly, I think it's probably good. The metagame that we had when Evolve came back from Wild and we were like Evolve Desert Herring was pretty miserable. So I hope that it's not like something that's everywhere, because when it is, it's really like pretty frustrating to play against. But I know that I'm going to be playing this and I'm going to be having a blast. Speaking of Evolve cards that hopefully aren't too good, Bog Strock Clacker, 3-cost Battlecry, transform adjacent minions to random minions that cost 1 more. This guy's cool. There's a lot of Battlecry minions in Shaman. Stuff like Storm Chaser. Is Storm Chaser rotating out? I'm not entirely sure. I think it might be. But there's just a lot of stuff that Shaman, likes to have battle cries, obviously the battle cry quest and everything, that are like relatively low impact, pretty poor stats for their cost, and then being able to evolve them up afterwards can be pretty valuable. It can also just, this is actually just not like horrible if you're just using it to evolve totems. You just like evolve 2 totems, get a 3/3 and then 2 totems into 2 drops. It's not a disaster. It's it is a battle cry effect, which is not as relevant as it once was because of the rotation of Shudderwalk. May Shudderwalk rest in peace. But yeah, I feel like this is a cool card. Much like the Bog Spine Knuckles, I don't think that it's likely to see tons of play. I can't really think of like Doppelgangster or Desert Hare type cards that are around. Right? Is Desert Hare actually still around? I'm actually not sure off the top of my head whether Desert Hare is rotating or not. I think it is still around because otherwise it would have been around when Mutate was as well. Oh no, it is good. Oh no, it is still around. Yeah, Desert Hare will still be around. So you could be Desert Hare Bog Stalking or Bog Spire Knuckling. But that's not nearly as scary as Desert Hare Evolving because both of them are much slower, and your opponent has a chance to kill the Desert Hares, where it's at least happening on a turn that is not 3. Next up, we have Lady Vash, who is the prime in Shaman. Spell damage +1, 4/3, 4/3, 4/3, 4/3, 3 mana. Get it? Anyway, this is a decently powerful card by on the front side. Shaman has a lot of ways to use spell damage. They have like Lightning Storm and variety of stuff like that they can scale off of spell damage pretty well. Lightning Bolt, etc., etc. And then obviously the Death Rattle Shuffle Vash Prime into your deck gives you boom Vash Prime, who is spell damage +1 with Battlecry. Draw 3 spells, reduce their cost by 3. So this feels like the sort of card that very likely wants to go into like an aggressive Shaman deck. If you want the spell damage, you're very likely to be wanting to play stuff like Lightning Bolt or Lava Burst. And Vash Prime, you draw 3 spells, you reduce their cost by 3, and then you have spell damage +1, and you're just like, okay, Bolt, burst you, or burst, bolt you. It's just like tons of damage that can come out of that. Obviously, with Vash Prime, if you're on that plan, you don't want to just have a bunch of random spells in your deck that like Vash Prime drawing would be poor with. You want to have as many like damaging spells as possible. But obviously, we already saw Serpent Shrine Portal. Serpent Shrine Portal, is a damaging spell that costs 3 mana that you can draw off Vash Prime to deal 4 to something and summon a minion. So yeah, I think that this is a powerful card. I feel like to maximize the value of Vash Prime, you definitely want to be building your deck in such a way that you have as many cards that are damaging spells that cost 3 or less as possible, in order to be able to get that sort of real burst as soon as you play Vash Prime. Next up, we have Torrent. It's a 5-cost spell, deals 8 damage to a minion, costs 3 less if you guys a spell last turn. This is maybe a card that goes into a Vash deck, because it is a spell that cares about spells, which Vash does, and you can cast off Vash Prime, but it does only damage minions. I feel like this is just a strong card for a board control style deck, so maybe not a burn style deck that I was just advocating that Vash Prime wants. But yeah, this is just a efficient way to remove basically any minion. 8 damage is a lot, kills everything up to giants, and there's only even sea giant these days. But yeah, there's also just like a lot of synergies with spells in general in Shaman. And you have like the Serpent Shrine Portal that is a minion that's also a spell basically. So yeah, I feel like this is just a solid card that can see play in any kind of like mid-range or control Shaman deck that has a decent number of spells. Obviously, this is fairly poor in a control matchup where your opponent doesn't necessarily have big things, or against a like really fast deck. Even just spending 2 to kill like a minion isn't necessarily good, but if you're like AoEing and then able to follow up and kill their big thing, I think it's a really big deal. Next up, we have Totemic Reflection. Give a minion +2/+2. If it's a totem, summon a copy of it. Sadly, Nightmare Amalgam is rotating, so you can't like Totemic Reflection your Amalgam and get 2 5/6s. This is a pretty funny card. There's just all these like totem cards in Shaman all the time, and it feels like they never quite come together. But right now, there's actually a Totemic Surge and Totemic Might and Totemic Reflection all in the format at the same time, and Splitting Axe. Can we actually make a totem deck? Is this the key? Is Totemic Reflection the card that will finally make Totemic Might into a powerhouse? The answer is no, but we can try. Next up, we have Shattered Rumbler, which, incidentally, this is not the final version of the card. This is the version of the card that went out in the preview, the spoiler. This is the version of the card that I saw during the summit. This is the version of the card that they had a gameplay trailer of, and then they changed the version of the card, because now it is, if you cast a spell last turn, deal 2 damage to all other minions. It doesn't damage itself. So that's actually kind of a big deal, because there's a big difference between a 4/4 body that you get afterwards and then a 4/6 body. Obviously, this is a strong card in a controlling spell deck, which is where kind of like the Torrent deck. This wants to be in the same deck, obviously, and this is the small minion version of Torrent, which is the big minion version. This actually just seems like a pretty solid card for a control deck. 2 damage to all minions. Be able to wipe out stuff like Treants and like imps from Galakron, things like that. Just seems like a totally solid card overall. It's pretty metagame dependent. How good is 2 damage to all minions? Can you back it up with other stuff if things are bigger than that? But Shaman has a pretty wide variety of removal options, especially if it's a spell heavy Shaman deck. So I feel like this is likely to have quite a bit of support and pretty likely to see at least some amount of play. And last but not least is the legendary, the Lurker Below. 6 cost 6/3. Deal 3 damage to an enemy minion. If it dies, repeat on one of its neighbors. So if 2 damage is not enough from the Shattered Rumbler, 3 damage from the Lurker Below. Boom, 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 boom. You got lackeys lined up in a row. Boom, 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 boom. I feel like this card is actually like pretty good. Obviously very contingent on what the metagame looks like, what minions are around. This feels like against any kind of token deck, obviously super powerful. Any kind of small minion deck in general, very, very powerful. It is a card that will cause people to question their positioning against Shaman, because you don't want to have a bunch of small things next to each other than a big thing in the end. You want to have your big things kind of in the middle, sort of meteor, the opposite of meteor positioning. But yeah, I think this is just a solid card for like any kind of AoE style situation. Not a card that I think necessarily goes into like every Shaman deck, but seems like a totally solid tempo play against any kind of minion based deck. And I totally accidentally skipped this one. Marsh Spawn. Lurker was not last. Lurker was not least. This is now last, but this is also not least. Battlecry, if you cast a spell last turn, discover a spell. 3/4/4/3. This card is just good. If you played a spell, you discover a spell. And it's a totally reasonable body. Elemental doesn't really matter that much right now. Not really a lot of elemental synergy type stuff anymore. But yeah, I mean, discovering a spell on a solid body, I think is totally solid. Shaman has a lot of spells that can just kind of cast for free. We obviously already saw Serpent Shrine Portal, which is like a reasonable, just like tempo play that gives you a body that is a spell. You can play this in like Farsight. I believe Haunting Echoes is Haunting Echoes, not Haunting Echoes. Haunting Visions is rotating. I believe the Witchwood card. So that is one of the really easy ways to just dig for dig with spells, do spell discovery, etc. Free spells essentially. That's gone, but there's still a lot of other options available to help support this alongside the Rumbler and Torrent. So I feel like this is just a really solid card. In any kind of mid-rangey spell-heavy Shaman deck, and I feel like there's a lot of tools to go in that direction in this set. That's it. That's Shaman.